Hi guys, welcome back to another LTF1 podcast. Today we've got a lot to talk about with all the news that's come out in the last few hours surrounding Hamilton's COVID test and Mercedes and Haas's driver lineups. So let's get straight into it. Today we're back with Ishan and Raj.
I'm
So,
back.
Well,
so firstly, we should probably start the podcast with a bit of good news. Haas has reported that Grosjean's injuries aren't as bad as they first thought they would be, and he might be able to get back for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So that's good. But bad news coming out today is that Hamilton has COVID-19. At least he's tested positive for it and he's experiencing some mild symptoms. So obviously we hope that he recovers from that soon enough. But his positive test has thrown the rest of the drive market into a bit of disarray, with many drivers vying for the seat that he's going to be leaving behind for the next race. I'll ask you first before we start anything else. Who do you think will get it?
I think personally it's most likely to go to Van Dorn because he's already the Mercedes reserve driver. So even though he's doing Formula E at the minute, it looks most likely to be him. But do I want it to be him? No, but I think it will be.
We know you want it who you want it to be, despite the fact that Williams require him for this week. But personally, I think that Stoffel Van Dorn, as Ishan said, is the primary candidate for the seat. But in terms of merit and who should deserve it, I believe that Hulkenberg, in the two drives that he's had this season, deserves to get a third drive in a car that he could challenge in and potentially beat Valtteri Bottas and Verstappen in and potentially even get a win, which I believe would be his first in Formula One.
It'd be his
First
first
podium.
podium. Yeah, which would be a
Um,
great story for him to get his first podium in a season that he's not actually contesting in. But I don't know. I can't see Hulkenberg going to Mercedes. They seem to have quite a
Yeah,
few other drivers ready.
if anyone's seen Hulkenberg's Instagram story this evening, he's either confirmed that he's not going to be driving or that he is going to be driving, but not stepping on a plane. So it looks like it's not going to be Hulkenberg. So even though I do think he does deserve it in some ways, less than George Russell, but more than Van Dorn, I don't think it's going to be Hulkenberg.
I've actually heard that for Toto, the number one priority is getting George Russell in, so he's the first option if Williams agree to that, and the second option is actually Van Dorn. But a lot of people are also saying that Williams might not want to let George go because next weekend is their best chance at points this season, and they don't have as much faith in Latifi as they do in Russell.
I think Williams should just let go of the we might get a point this year because it's not going to happen. And I think George Russell, he deserves bigger than that. And this is going to be his audition for potentially the next couple of years if Mercedes decide to let Bottas go. So I think the sensible thing for them to do is to step aside, realise we're not getting a point this year. We'll come back next year, have him for the whole season, and let him have his chance at an audition of Mercedes.
Even if they don't get Russell driving next race, Williams I'm talking about here, they'd still be getting Van Dorn, who Mercedes were happy to put in their car. So he's got plenty of quality. Or they can take a Hulkenberg, and they've still got a chance at a point. If they're going to get it, they get it.
But Mercedes are putting him in a car that is one of the leading cars on the grid. They've already won the Constructors' Championship. They've already sealed the title with Hamilton. So they haven't got anything to lose. Whereas in terms of Williams, with Stoffel Van Dorn, he's not really bringing much to the table. And as we've seen in his time at McLaren, I don't think he
didn't impress anyone. A lot of Van Dorn's problems at McLaren was the fact that they had a really bad car and he had a really difficult teammate to try and get on top of. So coming in at Williams, no expectations. He's just come out of Formula E testing, so he's not like completely out of touch. So if all three of us want Russell in the Mercedes, what do you think is the most likely scenario if he does get the seat?
I think if George Russell gets the Mercedes seat this weekend, in that car, he's likely to finally get his first points in F1 and have the chance to finally finish above Lando and Alex Albon. And I do think, though, it'll put big pressure on Bottas to perform, because if Bottas doesn't perform in this car this weekend without Hamilton, and say it was George Russell and George Russell finished above him, I think it would really put his career at Mercedes in danger. So I think it's a really big race for Bottas as well.
Anything short of a win for Bottas is a complete failure in my eyes. His main competitor's not there. He needs to win that race. And for George, I think he needs to be getting P5 and above. Otherwise, it's going to look like he's wasted the opportunity. So it's a lot of pressure on him as well, if he does get that drive.
Yeah, and we've seen this year George Russell can push a car. Obviously, Williams haven't had the pace on a Sunday. But I think George Russell could, not easily, but I think he can. He does have the potential to finish above P5. And I think he will, given the chance. Because we've seen he's a good driver all year, so
I seen one comment on Twitter that said, if George Russell gets on the podium, or if somehow, by some miracle or just driving skill, he wins the race, or comes a close second, then all the Hamilton haters that say, he's where he is because it's 90% the car and he's not actually doing anything, they're all going to get legitimized, because if George Russell can just jump in and in his first race get on the podium in that Mercedes, then you would think it's a pretty easy car to drive and then you'll do it.
I disagree with that, even though I know that will be the thing. But I think that says more than anything what a talented driver that George Russell is.
Actually, you've been quiet.
He sat there shaking his head at me, that's why.
If you don't want to see George Russell in the Mercedes, what do you want to happen on the weekend?
I want to see a driver who would actually use the car to its full ability, not somebody who's been running around at the back of the grid for the whole flipping year, got no points, done nothing extremely special. I'm not saying Bottas is brilliant, but
he hasn't got no points because he's a bad driver.
Mercedes have the opportunity to show that Bottas is not cut to be in that seat. And if they want to pick a young driver, then that is the right way to go. But completely believing that George Russell is for that seat is so reductionist and minimalistic that it's just not right, in my opinion.
In what way? He finished top of the Formula 2 championships. He was the best driver in Formula 2. He's been Williams' top driver over Latifi that's just come in. He's pushed the car every week, finished higher positions than what it should do. So I don't understand how.
The key number there was 2. Formula 2. Not Formula 1, Formula 2.
Well, he's been at the slowest car in Formula 1.
He could have only wanted in Formula 2.
But it shows that he's a better quality of driver in a Formula 2 car than anyone else was that season. And given a good car like Lando Norris has been, like Alex Albon has, would be his chance to see what a good or bad driver he is, given the opportunity.
Well, in terms of Alex Albon, we've seen how well he's done with his good car.
Red Bull's a whole different story, and I have to agree with Ishan here. If you don't rate George Russell, I don't know if we're watching the same sport.
I'm not saying he's not brilliant, but I'm saying that you shouldn't cut out other drivers who potentially are more deserving of that seat than George Russell.
But I think out of the 3 options for this weekend, George Russell's the strongest candidate. Because Hülkenberg, yes, he came in and performed solidly this year in the 2 races, but George Russell's been consistently solid in a much worse car.
But in terms of Stoffel Van Dorn, if Mercedes do see a potential in him and a future for him in that seat, it would be pretty controversial to have him as a backup driver all year and then not utilize him when he's required and decide to choose another individual just based on the fact that, yeah, he's performed well. But the person who's backed you all year, been your supporting driver, done the hard graft throughout the whole year, and he's not getting the opportunity that he deserves, in my opinion. I feel it'd be very controversial.
it might not be morally right, but it's a cutthroat sport and a cutthroat business where Mercedes will want their next step to be the right step after Bottas, or even for this weekend after Hamilton. So I think they'd rather try and give someone who they see as the future an opportunity rather than, be nice and give everyone an equal opportunity that's been at the
But
team
they
there
wouldn't.
because they've been there all season.
They wouldn't keep him as a supporting driver if they didn't see something in him.
For me,
But
I have to agree with you,
they've
Shane.
utilised him for the Formula E team.
You don't
Even
agree
if
with me anytime soon?
no, I don't agree with you.
Not very
For me,
nice,
you're
is it?
chatting.
It's not very
If
nice, is
you
it? Trying to provide a different
if
perspective here, lads. Good.
if Russell doesn't
Oh,
get the
God.
seat, I still want. I would still prefer Hulkenberg to get the seat instead of Van Dorn. Van Dorn's out. He almost doesn't mean anything to F1 anymore. He started his FE career, and he's doing well in FE. He's got a seat there, a permanent seat. He's not someone you need to worry about. There's other drivers that could do better with an opportunity.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I don't think
Van
Rad is
Dorn
going
I'm
to.
just going to give up right now. I can't bother to sit here arguing with
Well,
you
Van
two.
Dorn
You
started
two
a new
constantly
career,
siding
so
with each other.
Yeah, I didn't think Raj was going to say much more after we ganged up on him. Let's move the conversation on then to Haas and Mazepin. Very controversial.
controversial.
They've clearly signed him for the money. He must be bringing a lot into the team, and they've signed him on a multi-year deal. So they've not even done a 1 year to see how it goes.
I think he was decent, but I think there was other drivers that deserve the seat more than him. This might come across as British bias, but it's not. I think Callum Ilott deserved it more because, well, he's been better this year, and I think, not to simplify the debate too much, but he has a similar sort of Lance Stroll sort of background, billionaire father, but with all the controversies with Mazepin, I don't know if it's on a PR level good for Haas to bring him in.
They seem to have replaced Magnussen, who was controversial at times, with a younger, even more controversial Magnussen. I can see him getting into a lot of, especially in his rookie season, if that car is good enough to fight in the midfield, I can see him getting into a lot of incidents on track and off track in the paddock.
Do you feel he will be like a Danny Kvyat when he first entered Formula One?
I think that was Danny Kvyat was a bit of a victim at times. I don't think Nikita Mazepin is going to be a victim. Because I think that the whole Daniel Kvyat thing wasn't handled well by Red Bull, and there was definitely outside players in his demotion.
Given Mazepin, the incidents he's been involved in, assaulting another driver and so on, you wonder if he's going to keep it together next year as well. Because it's not a good look for F1 that a man that's been accused of, as I saw today on social media, him allegedly harassing girls, it's known that he assaulted another driver and so on. I don't think it's a good look for F1, and it's a good look for Haas that he's been brought in, given all of those controversies, and given there's better options that they could have gone with. But it's clear to see that it was a very money-oriented decision.
But do you not think that confidence that Haas have instilled into him will make him change his ways and adapt to Formula One and potentially mature as a driver and also as a person due to the position that
No.
he's in and the fan following that will increase with him in that Haas car?
No, I don't think so, personally.
I think this was definitely orientated by the amount of money that he's going to be bringing in to the team. But I would have thought that Haas would value stability over a paycheck because they've had enough teammate collisions and incidents this year already. Now with two rookies that may or may not get on already in F2, because I've seen quite a few F2 drivers coming out saying that Ilott should have got the drive. It's going to be a very difficult garage to manage.
Yeah, who's going to want to be the second driver in that team? Because I don't think there's very many that will want to be a teammate with Mazepin.
Well, everyone thinks that Schumacher's getting the nod. I'm not sure why they wouldn't announce him first, though. Maybe they're waiting for him to tie the championship up.
I feel the first few races will indicate strongly who is the second driver and who is the first driver in that situation.
You would assume that they would try to play it off as equals because they're both rookies, so neither has more experience or knowledge in the setup or whatever. So I'd assume that the team would have to take on that second older driver mentor role, helping both drivers through setups and changeable conditions and things like that. There's going to be a lot of emphasis placed on their race engineers. And for a new team like Haas, that could prove a challenge. I wouldn't be surprised to see them still at the back of the field next year, if not worse.
What's worse than back at the back of the field?
Well, at least right now, if they pull off a good strategy or there's a crazy race and they have a chance at points, I'm saying they might replace Williams as the slowest car.
I think they're pretty close this season. They're not brilliant. They're not doing brilliant. The drivers are less motivated, I feel, because they haven't been guaranteed that seat. It's not gone brilliantly for them. The last two races don't seem all that for them. And looking forward to next year, especially with the Ferrari engine in the back, they don't seem to be progressing forward.
Yeah, and I think it's a completely wrong decision with their first choice of driver for next year. So I think that series of bad decisions, along with them not doing well, I think it's just projecting them into a downward trajectory.
Well, some say that the team's actually going to get bought out there's a Russian time team in F2 by the same backers or similar Russian oligarchs are going to buy Haas off of Gene Haas. And that's why they put Mazepin there, because after Mazepin, they want an all-Russian lineup in a Russian team.
But yeah, I don't think that the takeover will happen. The Russian takeover will happen with Haas because, well, they've said the team's not for sale, but whether they will or won't is in a balance. But I don't think I could see it happening because Haas are the American F1 team, and I think they want to build a bigger brand for F1 in America. So I can't see it happening.
I think that NASCAR is such a dominant sport though over there that it's a losing battle. I think that NASCAR literally runs America, and I get that we have Austin, Texas as a race, and we've had it for quite a few years. But are they really thinking in a logical way when they're thinking that F1 will become a big sport there? I'm not so sure.
I think it has a place. I don't think it'll be number one in America, but it certainly has a place.
But in terms
We've
of
got another race
one
coming as well in Miami.
But if you look in terms of the sports that Americans watch, the three main ones, and then you have the one main motorsport, which is NASCAR. Do you think
And
that
Indy
there's
500.
that big a market for a second motorsport?
Yeah, because they've shown that they like single seat racing. They like the Indy 500.
The F1
So
back
I
in the
think-
day used to race at the Indy 500 as a one-off special
Yeah.
event, not tied to the World Championship. I think if they could somehow go back to doing that, making the Indy 500 two classes, Indy cars and F1 cars, then they have a route into America.
I feel that would be a better way to appeal to the American audience.
Because F1's, no offense to the Americans, a bit more sophisticated than Indy 500. So I think, hopefully, if they did do that for a few seasons, after it gets more of a following, they'd start to sophisticate it more over there as well.
And with Ishan insulting all the Americans that listen, we'll get Raj's thoughts on next week's Grand Prix, because you didn't get to give them in the race review that you missed.
I think it will be a very interesting race due to the fact that there are multiple drivers that aren't scheduled to be there, such as likes of Roman Grosjean, obviously, after the crash they had, which I didn't get to mention, but was one of the scariest crashes I've seen in my time watching Formula One. Also, the likes of Hamilton being omitted from the race due to the fact that he's got coronavirus. I feel that opens up pathways like we spoke about. and it will be interesting to see the decision that Mercedes make on that and how they approach it, whether they're looking for a safe driver, which the likes of Hulkenberg would fit that category, or they're looking for a young upcoming prospect who will be critical to them deciding the future of their team and the second seat. But in terms of the Bahrain Grand Prix, we can see that Formula One, that was potentially the most exciting race this season. We're definitely up there in terms of the action. And, well, we can only look forward to bigger and better things.
We'll end with that. Thanks to everyone for listening and you guys for joining to talk.
And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at _LTF1_ and Instagram LTF1official. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.
Over and out.
For anyone that has got this far, comment down below if you disagree with Raj's opinions about George Russell so we can all show him how wrong he is.